So you've probably heard that acronym ERP thrown around, right? It sounds complicated, maybe a little expensive, and honestly kind of intimidating. But it really doesn't have to be. In this explainer, we're going to slice right through all the jargon and find out what it really means for a business that's on the move. Hey, does this sound at all familiar? You've got your sales figures sitting in one Excel file, your inventory's tracked in a totally separate spreadsheet, all your customer info is in another app, and of course, accounting lives in its own little silo. It feels like you're constantly juggling, just trying to make sure everything lines up. And this slide just perfectly captures the whole problem. On the left, you've got what we call the old way. It's this tangled mess of different systems that absolutely do not talk to each other. It's organized chaos. But then, on the right, you see the ERP way, a single central hub where all that information just flows seamlessly. That right there is the journey from chaos to clarity we're talking about. To really get why this is such a big deal, let's start with the tool most of us use when we're getting started: the good old spreadsheet. Look, it's a fantastic place to begin, but as you start to grow, it very quickly becomes the source of some major headaches. What's so great about this list is how painfully relatable these problems are. For starters, there are no real-time updates. Your sales team could be out there selling products that the warehouse actually shipped out hours ago. Then you've got version control chaos. You know the one, files named final report _v3 use this one final. And maybe worst of all, they're just so prone to manual errors. One little typo in one formula and your whole financial forecast could be completely off. Okay, so if spreadsheets are the problem, what's the actual solution? And that brings us to the big question. What is an ERP, really? Let's just break down the jargon. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. Okay, let's make that super simple. Enterprise, that's just a fancy word for your business. Resource, that's everything you use to make it run: your money, your inventory, your people. And planning, well, that's the most important part. It shifts you from just reacting to yesterday's fires to actually proactively planning for tomorrow's success. You know, the absolute magic of an ERP system boils down to this one single word: integration. It means that when one thing happens in one part of the business, like a new sale is made, every other relevant part of the company gets updated automatically, instantly. Inventory, accounting, shipping, all of it. This creates what they call a single source of truth for your entire company. Now, that sounds great in theory, right? But what does it actually look like in practice? Let's make it real with an analogy I think we can all understand: running a super busy restaurant. So we're going to look at two different scenarios. First, the classic chaos of a restaurant trying to run on paper and a bunch of disconnected systems. And then we'll see the smooth, almost effortless operation of a restaurant that's powered by an ERP. In the restaurant without an ERP, it is a constant firefight. The waiter goes out and promises a customer a dish, but guess what? The kitchen just ran out of the main ingredient. The cooks have no idea what their ingredient levels are in real time, and at the end of a long night, the manager is sitting in the back, manually counting cash, trying to match it to a huge pile of paper order slips. You can't even figure out which dishes are actually making you money. Now, look at the difference with an ERP. A waiter takes an order on a tablet. Instantly, and I mean instantly, the system reserves the necessary ingredients from the inventory. The order pops up on the kitchen screen, and the sale is recorded in the accounting books. One single action triggers this perfect, seamless chain reaction. That is integration in action. Okay, the restaurant analogy makes it pretty clear, but does this stuff actually work in the real world? So let's move away from theory and get to the impact. Let's look at some hard numbers from actual businesses that made the switch. First up, we've got an apparel manufacturer that was really struggling to compete. They were drowning in spreadsheets, constantly missing their delivery deadlines, and wasting a ton of expensive material. Now, this wasn't just inefficient. It meant they couldn't design and launch new products fast enough to keep up with their competitors. After they put an ERP in place, the results? They were totally transformative. Their on-time delivery rate skyrocketed from 78% all the way up to 96%. And material waste, which is a huge drain on profits, was cut by a very significant 12%. But this is about so much more than just a couple numbers on a chart. Think about that 96% figure for a second. It represents a whole new capability: reliability. In a tough export market, being the supplier who always delivers on time isn't just a nice to have. It's how you win the bigger contracts. It's how you build your reputation. That is a total game changer. Next, let's look at a fashion retail chain with 8 different showrooms. Their biggest problem was what you might call invisible inventory. A customer would walk into one store, ask for a specific item, and get told, sorry, we're out, when that exact item was sitting on a shelf, unsold, in another store just a few miles away. It's a classic lost sale happening over and over again. The second they connected all their stores with the central ERP, they unlocked so much hidden potential. Revenue jumped up by 18%, and at the same time, they reduced all the cash they had tied up in unsold inventory by 25%. And this wasn't because of some big, expensive marketing campaign. No, that 18% revenue boost came purely from operational intelligence. It's the power of simply knowing what you have and where you have it, so you can look a customer in the eye, say yes, and actually deliver on that promise. It turned all those lost opportunities into guaranteed sales. Okay, our final example is a construction company. Now, these guys were juggling multiple big projects, and by the time they'd finish a job and actually do all the accounting, they'd often discover that they had actually lost money on the project. They had absolutely no real-time visibility into their costs as they were happening. With an ERP, they could suddenly track their budget versus their actual costs daily, not monthly. And the results? Well, project profit margins nearly doubled, going from 8% to 14%. And their equipment rental costs plummeted by 35% because they could finally schedule their own assets effectively. They went from guessing to knowing. The results are pretty compelling, you have to admit. But I know what you're probably thinking. This all sounds great for them, but is it right for me? Isn't it just too expensive or way too complicated? Let's tackle those myths head on. This is the number one myth we really need to bust. The idea that ERP is only for these giant multinational corporations. That might have been true 20 years ago, but today's cloud-based systems have made it incredibly affordable for almost any growing business. I love this quote because it completely reframes the conversation. The question isn't just about the upfront cost of the software, it's about the hidden, ongoing costs of not having an ERP. The wasted time, the lost sales, the expensive mistakes. When you look at it that way, a good system often pays for itself surprisingly fast. So, how do you know if you're actually ready? Let's do a quick checklist. Just think about these for your own business. Are you using 3 or more disconnected systems to run things? Does your month-end accounting take forever? Have you lost sales because you didn't know you were out of stock? If you find yourself nodding along to a few of these, you are very likely feeling the exact pain an ERP is designed to solve. Ultimately, it all comes back to where we started. Are you okay running your business in a state of controlled chaos, or are you ready to operate with the kind of confidence that only comes from total clarity? The real question is it time for you to make that shift?